that uncertainty isn't something that isolates us. Uncertainty is actually something that can unite us.
What I found is that if people don't speak about it, they don't own it, then naturally they're gonna burn out.
This rising uncertainty is often perceived as a threat, and it impacts people in multiple ways.
We're not putting a shining light on their vulnerability, but we're inviting them to be human.
Naming the threat and naming the uncertainty can often neutralize it in some way.
Welcome back to another episode of Limitless. Today I'm very, very excited because I have two guests with me here on the show. We have Linda and Brian, and they are here to talk about something that I'm sure is on many leaders' mind today. There's so many challenges out there, there's so much change, and perhaps there's more uncertainty than we would like it to have at the moment. And how does this impact then the confidence we have as a leaders? And what is it at someone at the top of an organization? I know that we have many CEOs listening to this show should bear in mind what is going through the minds of our teams. So a warm welcome to you. Let's start off with you, Linda. Would you like to introduce yourself briefly, please?
I would love to. My name is Dr. Linda Schubring, and I say that you don't have to call me doctor, but I am the doctor and he is the mister, and we are happily married to each other. I am the president of Leadership Vision Consulting and the principal consultant and the author of Unfolded that I wrote with my husband.
Well, thank you. I am also part of Leadership Vision. I am the founder, also principal consultant. We are the consulting team that does all of our work worldwide. I also am the author of our book, Unfolded. And our company, Leadership Vision Consulting, we are a global consulting firm, and we work broadly in leadership advisory services. We simply help executives and teams understand their individuals. By understanding individuals, how can we create teams that are not only healthy, but dynamic and equipped to face the variety of challenges that are out there?
Wonderful. Thank you, Linda and Brian. And I'm also so happy to have you as a couple here today on the show. Behind the scene, I'm also working together with my wife. So we're also a couple doing business together. And my wife would be super excited when she will see this show because it looks like we have a power couple here on the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Okay, so let's dig into it then. And what are you seeing right now out there with the leaders you work with?
Well, one of the primary themes that we're seeing in the last 6 months specifically is this rising concern that executives have over how to navigate and face rising uncertainty. And one of the first points that we often make is that this rising uncertainty is often perceived as a threat, and it impacts people in multiple ways: emotionally, relationally, intellectually, and professionally. And so this topic of uncertainty is usually how we start working with our clients.
And we're seeing leaders that are willing to step up to the challenge and face the uncertainty and rally their teams and get people to be moving in different directions and drawing upon other life experience than maybe just what they were trained for.
Right. So what I'm hearing is that many are stepping up to the challenges and so on. And how do they do that? What do the best leaders do to be able to cope with all these uncertainties?
That's a great question. First and foremost, I think it's important for executives to recognize that uncertainty seems to be a state of mind and a state of being for a lot of people, and people feel threatened. So first of all, to simply name the uncertainty that people are facing. And then once we name it, to step back and ask ourselves, not about the uncertainty itself, but to ask ourselves, how are we equipped to navigate the uncertainty in front of us?
Because it's easy to name it's easy to name the uncertainty outside of us. And we want to anchor people to the certainties that they find within themselves, that they have the answers there, that they just needed to do a little internal work, maybe have a good little rest or exercise, or make sure they're hydrated and be able to draw upon their lived experience.
Okay, well, that sounds like some good ideas and tools there. In my line of work as a therapist and counselor, I get to work with the ones who haven't been able to cope. And I see also there's a lot of a lot of bad habits turning into addictions. Even I'm seeing people dealing in all kind of ways, the ones who perhaps don't speak about it. And I know we're going to talk about vulnerability today, and I think this is perhaps a good moment to do that, because what I found is that if people don't speak about it, they don't own it, then naturally they're going to burn out, and then they will find unhealthy coping mechanisms. Is that something that you see also in your line of work?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
What you said really aligns with what it is that we find working with our clients too. Because naming the threat and naming the uncertainty can often neutralize it in some way. And then once we begin to name the uncertainty, then we ask our people and our teams that we work with to begin to identify what some of the stories are that are being told around the uncertainty. Because as you know, Nick, sometimes the stories we're telling ourselves about the uncertainty often overshadow the qualifications and capacities we actually have to face the uncertainty.
And some leaders do not want to be vulnerable. And they already feel vulnerable in the kind of uncertainty or the chaos or the change that's happening around them. And so we try to create environments where people feel known, they feel seen, they don't feel exposed, and that we're not putting a shining light on their vulnerability, but we're inviting them to be human, inviting them to name some of their needs and name some of their issues that they want to work through, and not just let it become something that rules them.
What we want to do with this idea of uncertainty is almost reframe it, Nick, for the people that are going through it as not something that uncertainty isn't something that isolates us. Uncertainty is actually something that can unite us. Because like you said, Nick, uncertainty, it causes this rise of a feeling of vulnerability. Well, actually, most people do feel very vulnerable in uncertainty. And if we can help people understand that uncertainty creates a shared emotional experience that can sometimes feel very vulnerable and threatening, it can also create a shared experience where people feel confident and equipped to face the challenge of uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
And how does it affect the teams then? And I would imagine that you work with many leaders who have big teams and so on. And if the leader is a bit shaky, how does that affect the teams in that case?
Let's say one word: contagious. It is very, very not easy. It's a very identifiable characteristic that the leader is the one that is casting the energy or the vibe into the team. And at this point, I would often say that when uncertainty rises, I want to be able to identify who's taking the lead role in creating the emotional experience. That may not be the leader. It could be the person who's the most emotionally reactive, and they create the emotional environment within the team.
And rarely there's just one leader that is in charge. We invite people to gather the leaders, gather the influencers, and be strong for each other so they can model the ways that the organization is going to navigate the changing tides.
Yeah, and I'm speaking in my work then as a counselor and therapist about safe spaces, also talking about safe spaces at work, that we need to not perhaps overshare to everyone in the office, but choosing the people to talk to. What do you see and what advice do you give there?
Well, we ask leaders to understand that each member of their team has a different definition of what safety means to them. And so oftentimes we're inviting leaders to have a very open-handed and open-armed approach to what does safety mean for the individuals, and how do you create a space where people can talk about if they do or don't feel emotionally safe, and then recognize that safety could be intellectual, it could be someone that feels physically unsafe or relationally unsafe. So there are also many layers to that safety. But as human beings, we all know that we have a psychological need to feel safe. And so we ask leaders, how do you create a place where people feel that they belong? And in that relational belonging, they actually feel professionally safe.
And usually an outside entity is helpful to come in and to be asking the questions that aren't going to be put in a file or aren't going to be passed around in the office. And usually people step into knowing each other by even just sharing some of the places or people that have shaped who they are. When they start to speak about their lived experience, usually there's a connection that is made where the team itself is creating that sense of safety for each other.
Some great tips there. Thank you so much for sharing. And while we are facing all these uncertainties there now, what are then some of the opportunities you see for leaders ahead?
Well, one of the opportunities that we see, and this is specifically to our clients, Nick, is we see this rising willingness for leaders to take a more holistic approach to how they're interacting with their leaders. We all know that we have organizational objectives and needs that we have to pursue. Well-informed leaders know that there is a very holistic or well-being approach that can also be taken in the workplace that creates a different sense of strength and confidence that people have when facing challenge and uncertainty.
The opportunities are everywhere. And we are finding leaders that are saying, like, I don't know how to lead through this. I'm like, well, try something new. And we invite people to a more iterative, just run some experiments. Practice without the cameras on. Practice without people having to post about it and share about it. And the opportunities are to grow up as leaders and be willing to not just be pushed into camps or extremes or having to pick sides.
That's good.
Yeah. And I want to pick also on what you said there, Brian. You mentioned the term holistic. And before we started recording today, we were talking about the big part of sport and health in our lives. How does that play in today?
Well, it's interesting you asked that question, Nick, because when I'm coaching an executive, I'm not afraid to ask about their physical and emotional well-being as they're navigating challenges and uncertainties. Even today, I had 3 coaching clients today, and 2 of the 3 brought up on their own how they are merging their physical fitness and emotional mindfulness fitness into the workplace. And I feel that there is a rising awareness that anxiety and stress and high cortisol levels have an impact on our well-being. And people are not only aware of that, but I think that people are learning that they have more control over their physical and mental health than they maybe once thought, and certainly how they haven't practiced in the past. So there's an invitation there for most leaders for sure.
And there's leaders that take care of themselves and they're very active and they're in motion. And those leaders are inspirational to their people and to their teams. And it becomes a norm to not say, how many push-ups did you do? Or how many Ironmans did you complete? But instead, how have you moved your body? How have you taken care of yourself? Are you sleeping well? And
we have executive leaders, Nick, who actually talk about these practices with in their executive team meetings. We even have executives that begin their ET meetings with a meditative practice or deep breathing or helping people settle down and relax their shoulders. So we're seeing more executive leaders really experiment, Nick, with what it means to bring wellness into the workplace that isn't really over the top, but just what people need to maybe be more present and aware not only of the environment that they're in, but of their own emotional well-being.
That's a wonderful trend. So thank you for sharing that, Linda and Brian. And then in all of these times when it's so fast change, so many changes, so much uncertainty, in your view, what is it that leaders forget to do? Is there anything that they leave behind, something that we can, support the listeners with and perhaps think about?
I'm laughing because I think a lot of leaders need to forget some of their habits. But what I think my more serious answer to that question is that oftentimes we experience leaders, they forget that people's pace of change and people's ability to pick up the rate of change within a team, it's going to fluctuate with each individual. As unique as each individual is, so too is their approach to change. It's not as much that we fear it, it's that maybe leaders don't give enough space for that individual to navigate change the way that best fits them.
Sometimes leaders have great teams that are willing to learn things quickly and grab hold of things quickly. Sometimes leaders forget that it takes a little bit to let go of the things that aren't serving them. And it takes a little bit to unlearn or rethink the patterns that aren't serving anymore and to then have space and capacity to learn those new things and then hit the accelerator.
So Linda and Brian, in these times of so much change, there's so much uncertainty. And one way that I've seen that some of the best leaders are tackling this is by being vulnerable, by admitting what they don't know, the areas where they are weak, where they need to upskill themselves to grow. And that sets the scene for the whole company then, or their team at least, that in this company, we don't have to be shy to raise our hand and say, I don't know that, but then get into it and learn about it. What do you see?
We see that some of the more healthy teams that we work with, they have leaders that are practicing this idea of expressing their vulnerability in a more consistent way. And by vulnerability, we mean maybe just asking for help could be a very easy demonstratable entity where you're saying, I need help and I'm vulnerable here, because we're not asking executives to display immense vulnerability. What we are asking is, how do you as a leader demonstrate that you are vulnerable, that you do need to ask for help, that you are curious about how you can grow, and then invite other people into that dialogue as well. One of the tips we often talk about with executives who want to create more vulnerability and trust within their teams is to find a vulnerability or trust partner in the team, someone who will also further the conversation. So it isn't just the executive, him or herself, talking about it. It's somebody else who's willing to share, to create a different perspective where others feel that it's safe for them to be vulnerable themselves.
Okay, thank you for that. And you have a best-selling book out there. I just want to also ask you about Unfolded. If someone is listening today and curious to learn more about you, what can they expect in Unfolded?
They can get a sense of who we are as a couple in business and in life. The book is called Unfolded: Lessons in Transformation from an Origami Crane. It's designed to be a story that you can see yourself in. And Brian started the book off this way: there once was an origami crane who dreamed of becoming a paper plane. And the only way she could do that is to be unfolded.
And this allegory has a very unique application within the business context, because what we talk about in the book is that in order for our main character to change, she needs to learn how to be with and work with the place that she's in and the people that are in that place. And in the workplace, oftentimes we know that in order for us to face change and ultimately transformation, we have to understand the environment that we're in, the growth opportunities that are there for us. And key to all of it is, who are the people that are helping us reshape who we are, and who are those people that, for whatever reason, are the ones that are hindering or getting in the way of our growth. So central to our book and how we apply it to businesses, how do we learn to be in the environments that we are and take advantage of the opportunities there are for growth? And how do we learn to work with the people around us and work with the emotions that are inside of us? And,
but wait, there's more.
The origami crane is made of a map. And principle to our message is that each one of us, so we use that metaphor of a map to talk about how each one of us are created from our own unique maps that are our lived experiences, representing the people that have shaped us. And we use this metaphor for people to understand, like, what are those true, profound creases and folds in our life that no matter what shape we're in, they're always going to be there. We can't change. And how do we unfold parts of our lives and discover new parts of our talent and our ability and our unique characteristics that we may have forgotten about, or that just simply have been hidden?
And Brian isn't just an elite athlete. He is a mystic who has been practicing writing in the morning before we all wake up for the last 42 years. And Brian wrote the most beautiful meditations that are in between every chapter, that now some of the teams that we're working with, they read those meditations to start meetings and help people start to look inside. And we hoped that our book became a shelter for introspection and a springboard for action.
Beautiful. And I think that's a wonderful place to end today's show. Thank you so much, both Linda and Brian, for coming on, talking about leadership in these uncertain times, giving our listeners some confidence there. And I'm sure many are curious now to pick up a copy of Unfolded. So thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you so much, Nick.
Yeah. So gracious. Thank you.
A pleasure.
Thank you. And thanks to the listeners, and bye for now.